Welcome to the Get Fit Guys quick and dirty tips to get moving and shape up. My name is Brock Armstrong, and I'm the Get Fit Guy. A few years ago, I had a podcast episode called The Many Benefits of Foam Rolling, where I taught you how to foam roll your body into a happier, healthier, and higher performing version of itself. Well, the research and science around foam rolling has progressed since then, and companies like TriggerPoint are creating more and more interesting ways to foam roll. So I thought it was time to revisit this topic with the guidance of a true foam rolling expert named Michael Cummings. Michael Cummings has been a professional in the sport and fitness industry for more than 20 years. He has owned and operated gyms, yoga studios, and wellness centers. He's designed and built the infrastructure for several successful health clubs. He has consulted for many of the top industry's top brands on product development, education, and programming, and he created the sport and fitness training line of products for skills and has had over 50 patents in his name. Michael also consults with governments, Olympic committees, and the military, and I could go on, but I won't. But all right, here is Michael, or MC, as his friends call him, and he is going to give us, a masterclass in one of my favorite things to do pre, post, and even during a workout, and that is foam rolling. Take it away, MC.
So what's happening when we roll are two different things. You have an effect called shear or shearing and an effect called compression, okay? The difference is with compression, imagine pushing your thumb into your forearm. So you're pressing through your skin, the superficial deep fascia, and through your muscle. With shearing, it's basically like gripping your wrist and turning. So your skin is like turning or having some torsion to it. What that's doing is taking like the top layer of tissue and moving it in one direction while the lower level or the deep layer goes in an opposite direction. So what shear actually means is two different components moving parallel with one another, but in a different direction. So if you put your hands together and take one back and one forward, kind of in this like friction creating way, that's shearing. One of the things that we looked at, and this is a pretty simple study that was done by Helene Langevin, and basically she had people bend over and touch their toes, and people that had back pain, she took an ultrasound and put it on their lower back and saw what she called a Velcro effect, where these tissues that I spoke about before were basically adhered or they gripped together and they didn't move. And the people who were able to touch their toes without pain, when she took an ultrasound, she realized that these layers slided and glided over one another in a way that there was no stickiness to that. And so when we look at that, we look at how foam rolling can affect that. So after an adhesion is built up, you can use a foam roller to create slide and glide. And foam rollers work through compression and they work through shearing, okay? So that said, let's talk about how that happens. Well, to understand how that slide and glide happens, we have to understand fluid dynamics and what happens within the tissue themselves. There's a lot of water and a lot of viscous material solution that lives within our tissues. And so what can happen is a potential reason why tissues don't glide is the quantity and quality of water that we can find within those tissues. If it's not hydrated, those tissues are going to have more of that Velcro effect. So the liquid that we're looking at that I'm going to call water is actually called hyaluronan, okay? Hyaluronan is this liquid that sits between the superficial and deep fascial layers. And it's one of the reasons why tissues can move back and forth against one another. If you were to kind of break that down and look at the anatomy, hyaluronic acid or hyaluronan, it's a fluid system that's found throughout all the extracellular space in the loose connective tissue and the fascia. And this acts as a lubricant, okay? It's a tissue lubricant that helps with that slide and glide that Dr. Langeman talked about. And what we know now is that foam rolling can aid in pushing this fluid through these tissues. It can also cause this, what we call a sponge effect, where one essentially is going to squeeze or wring out the tissue in order for more fluid to travel back into the area. That word is called reperfuse, the ability for that tissue to rehydrate after it's been sponged or wrung out. And so what happens with that hyaluronan, the HA, it's this lubricant, and a lot of the tissue lubrication that we already have, the liquid is very viscous. So think about honey. Now, when you apply pressure or compression to the tissue, you actually are releasing these bodies of hyaluronan that are stuck within the cells themselves, and they release what's called bound water. Now, if you add water to honey, what happens to that honey? It becomes much less viscous, or it becomes more slippery. Now, if I had honey between my hands and I tried to rub them back and forth, it's not going to go very well. But now if I take that same amount of honey, add water to them, and do that same thing, all of a sudden I've changed the constitution of that, and it's far less viscous. And so I have this really slippery area where my hands can run back and forth on. And that's the idea of releasing this bound water to hydrate the tissues to create that slide and glide, or that mobility. That's what we talk about when we talk about that mobility. Okay, so that's essentially what it's doing, okay? And we can influence the amount of liquid or hydration, which causes mobility, through compression, stretch, movement, and temperature, okay? All things that we're affecting through foam rolling. So the other effect that can happen is we're loaded in our tissues with mechanoreceptors. And so we can have basically a conversation with the brain. There's all of these mechanoreceptors, or these touch receptors, that live in the skin and the fascia. And anytime we touch on them, they send signals to the brain. And then the brain will send signals back to do different things. So let's just say I'm a runner and I want to activate. I've been having some ankle issues or some knee issues, and so I want to turn on the muscle. One of the things I can do is use a foam roller at a quick pace to stimulate the fast mechanoreceptors that want to get input to activate or to upregulate the nervous system, to create this activation or this hyperactive response. Now, that's awesome pre-activity, but that's not awesome if we're looking for recovery. And so there's different ways that we can hit different mechanoreceptors in the skin or the tissue. Like one of the deep mechanoreceptors that help with muscle recovery are gonna be hit through a slow and deep touch. These, like, they're the Ruffini endings, the Meissner corpuscles. If I do foam rolling with deep pressure, nice and slow for 60 seconds or more, that's how I'm going to create that down regulation, or that turning down my sympathetic nervous system, which is essentially that fight or flight thing that keeps you tense. So those are a couple different ways that you can use a foam roller to create these different things that can basically do what you want it to do. You can program foam rolling to get out of it what you're putting into it. All you do is change the pressure, the speed or the rate, and then the duration of it. Okay, so fast, slow, light. Like, if you go fast, you can improve your body awareness and you can activate and prepare for movement. When you go slow and like deeper pressure, you get this parasympathetic response. You can increase your mobility. And again, that light, effective touch, it's going to aid in pain mitigation. So a lot of times we like to say, we're not really rolling the skin, you're rolling your brain, which is just, it's a fun nerdy thing that we say. The last thing I want to touch on, maybe like 3 biggest tips for using a foam roller most effectively. Use a softer roller when you start out, and then you can advance to a more difficult one. Have an everyday roller. And then also, as you become more advanced, or as you start playing sports or, running competitively or something like that, and you have a necessity for other rollers. For example, we just launched something called the channel roller. The channel roller has a big cutout. So when you're rolling your spine, the foam roller is not touching any part of your spine. There's a big channel that's cut out. A lot of people like rolling their IT band because they can kind of place the really sore IT band in that channel and have more pressure on the outside, rolling and massaging surrounding tissue and not like the affected area itself. So a pretty smart way of doing that. And number 3, always worry about the larger muscle groups first. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to roll my psoas or my piriformis or my multifidus. Like, yeah, these are cool postural muscles and they're important, but they lay so deep that they're really hard to hit, independently. So pick muscle groups like calves, Achilles tendon, psoas, like those muscles that are gastroc that are just right there, and then go into hamstring and quadriceps and glutes. Those are the best things to hit, the larger muscle groups. They're going to have a lot of effect. There's no way you can just hit superficial muscle or primary movers and not have it affect the lower layers, because it is a compressive rolling technique. A massage therapist isn't just hitting one muscle, they're hitting that muscle and everything deep to that. And not only will you have great body awareness because of the touch sensation, it's also going to help you recover, relax, and or animate and reinvigorate or activate for warm-up. So I hope that wasn't too much. I kind of went fast. There's a lot in there. Again, my name is Michael Cummings. You can find me at Michael the Trainer on Instagram. You can also find me at TP Therapy or at TriggerPoint on the gram as well. And all right, guys, keep rolling. Yeah, keep rolling. Bye.
Keep rolling indeed. Thanks, MC. That was great. You taught me a thing or two about foam rolling. Now, if you have any more questions or if you want some clarification on anything that was covered in this episode, you can find me on social media. I'm GetFitGuy all over the place. But you can also find me, specifically, Coach Brock Armstrong, on my social media platforms just by looking for Coach Brock Arm. That's Coach Brock Armstrong, but without the strong. Coach Brock Arm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all those great places. You can find me there. Now, my name is Brock Armstrong. I'm the Get Fit Guy, asking you, what are you waiting for? Go foam roll your body.